and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can hear me. It's Tuesday, November 8th, and this is Day 9 Daily number 373, where we learn to be a better gamer. And now I'm going to start slowly pulling away from the microphone. Oh, yeah. I know a lot of you probably watched this, maybe at lunch hour at work, and I love the idea of someone leaning into the office, just getting ready to hand you a memo, and what do they hear? Psst, hey, psst, it's time for the daily. Psst, hey. Won't that be cool? No, I'm just watching a StarCraft strategy show over lunch hour. I bet. You've been caught, man. Well, that's okay. It's time to do the daily, and I wanted to note that I did play Amnesia last night. And a lot of people are noting in the chat right now, what happened to your nose? Why is it so red? Well, in general, when I'm low on sleep, my nose tends to just be red. I don't know what that is, but it's not related to that. My face broke out. And you know when my face breaks out? That's right, after stressful events. Amnesia strung me out so bad last night that I couldn't actually fall asleep. I kept having these amnesia-related nightmares, and I wake up and be like, but it wasn't actually like, oh my god, the scary beast is coming up from behind me or anything like that. Instead, what it was is I was in my bed, and I kept thinking that I was still streaming. And I was like, oh, no, they can see my butt. And I would literally get up and be like, oh, and I'd like try to cover my butt. But the weird thing is that, I don't know if you guys have this. I actually shouldn't say I don't know if you guys have this, because you do. Everyone has that one pair of boxers that they absolutely should throw away, right? It's like they're done. They have these giant rips in them. Like the spandex doesn't even do anything. You kind of have to like roll up the edges, and you're like, yeah, this will do. I was wearing that, and this pair of boxers kept coming into my nightmares, right? I kept being like, oh, they're going to see this pair of boxers. Wow, I need to throw these away. I have plenty of other pairs of boxers. What am I doing? And I was just like, it was all a dream. It was all a dream. But of course, the stress produced the Rudolph effect. How painful. What I could do is ignore it, but instead what I want to do is just talk about it live in front of many people. In very, very exciting news today, we are going to be beginning another chain of dailies. That is correct. We're going to be looking at a PvP style that has become quite popular, the 3-gate Robo. We're going to be talking about all its variations, and then subsequently, I'm going to be asking you to submit you trying it to Tuesday at day9.tv. That is the build order for the day. Good. I feel like there was something else to announce. What could it be? Oh, I know exactly what it is. Before we hop into this PvP daily, I want to state that a lot of you are excited for 11/11 because Skyrim is coming out. Skyrim, baby. Guess who is doing a streamathon of Skyrim? Yeah! Starting at 9 a.m. Pacific. I'm going to be streaming Skyrim for about 8 hours solid. I'll take those usual 30-second breaks in between, nom 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 nom, and eat some sort of burrito, no doubt. But I'm going to be streaming Skyrim nonstop, and I'm like so excited because it's not stressful. The stress is going to be saved for tomorrow night, where I'm going to just play Amnesia till I'm done. It might take me till 1 or 2 in the morning, but I'm determined to beat that game and get my badge of manliness, because I'm not very manly lately. Let's talk about Protoss versus Protoss, shall we? Yes, we shall. So, Protoss vs. Protoss has had a huge, gigantic, momentous shift occur lately. It obviously was built around the 4-gate, and I mean, the 4-gate, a lot of people think is the defining characteristic of the matchup, and they think of it all as terms of 4 gates, but I want to emphasize that it wasn't just 4-gate, it was one basing. Taking a second base was nearly impossible. Now, all of a sudden, the shift has been away from the 4-gate. The 4-gate is terrible, or it's not terrible, but it's less used. But the shift has been now to getting up extra expands, and in particular, people are no longer using the 4-gate as their sort of basis benchmark. They're instead using 3 gateways and a Robo in combination. So what we're going to look at today is the basic idea behind some solid ways to get 3 gateways and a Robo, And then what we're going to do is look at all the variations that you can do afterwards. We're actually going to be looking at 5 games today, so that way we can get a big smattering, a nice smorgasbord of tasty variations to choose from. And when you go out and try this in the next 24 hours, I want you to try to think hard about what variation you're doing, whether you chose the right one or not, and all that sort of thingy. Let's hop into the game. The 2 players we have are Elfie and White Ra. I believe this is from the recent Asus ROG tournament. Elfie is going to be the player that we're going to be focusing on to start with. So let's go ahead and just go to the Elfie cam for a brief period of time. We're going to be talking about White Ra's strategy and all that sort of goody goodness. But let's go ahead and turn the sound on. And let's talk about the ways in which we're going to see Elfie open. Now, one of the huge issues that you kind of have to ask yourself with every single build is, how do I hold off a 4-gate? Or how do I hold off a ton of early aggression? Even though the 4-gate is no longer this foundational platform strategy, it is going to come up a lot, and it's a decent opening. You have to be able to account for that. It's kind of like playing against a Terran player and not having any way to deal with a Banshee. It's just so common, you kind of have to have an answer for it. So, I want to first present a way of getting the Robo facility that we're not going to see in any of the games. And that is to get 1 Stalker out and then 1 Sentry out. And that is actually enough to be able to deal with the 4-gate. If you see the 4-gate coming, you force field the bottom of your ramp. But that first Stalker is actually quite essential, because you push his scouting probe all the way back, ensure that there's not any sort of crazy nearby pylon, and that'll buy you enough time to get your robotics facility up and running. Elfie, though, is going to have a much more clever solution that I'm really excited about. I would strongly encourage you to either do the White Ra variation, which is to get a Stalker and a Sentry up immediately, or to do the Elfie variation. Elfie, his defense is going to be a really solid offense. We've been chrono boosting probes a solid amount. Now, people generally still are spending almost all their chrono boost on probes or the warp gate upgrade. Just those 2. And there have not been very many creative solutions. But watch what Elfie's going to do. He's going to begin getting a Zealot up here. And then, interestingly, we're going to see a chrono boost on the Zealot right before it finishes up, followed immediately by a Stalker. I mean, Elfie whiffs it a little bit. If we back up, I just want to note that Elfie does indeed have the money to do this. Notice that, yeah, he has plenty to be able to do it. He just whiffed it a little bit. So getting that first Stalker out really quickly. Now, it's quite typical to spend a single chrono boost on a Stalker to try to repel this scout probe. But what we're going to see Elfie actually do is do a second chrono boost right on it. And there it is, a second chrono boost, just to ensure that that probe dies as fast as possible. And then the second gas is going to be coming out from Elfie, and then immediately a robotics facility. There it does go down, boom. And there's our second Stalker out. So now we have 2 Stalkers and 1 Zealot up. Now, if we actually come over to Camp White Ra is doing a pretty standard 2-gate build, so that way he can end up with 2 Stalkers out at a time. His first Stalker is sort of scouting around. Elfie, though, is going to be immediately barreling for the front door. If you spend 2 chrono boosts on your gateways, you're getting your first Zealot and 2 Stalkers up way faster than your average Protoss player would. So this absolutely allows you to push him back at the very least. And there's the 1 Robo coming out. I think this is a fairly important thing to do. To get this 1 Robo up before you end up getting any sort of gateways. Keep in mind your probes will always pop out wherever they enter the assimilator, so you can end up with these sorts of stupidity things going on. Elfie still is going to make the push. He's still going to be advancing all the way the hell forward, just to ensure that White Ra, if we come to the White Ra cam, White Ra has absolutely no clue what's going on. This probe died, he saw some chrono boost spent, and now he sees it looks like a very aggressive thing, a very aggressive push. Looks like a 4-gate. Now, after building this robotics facility, we start to see why Elfie got such an early second assimilator. An early second assimilator is actually quite important to any 3-gate Robo beginning. You absolutely must get that second assimilator up because you need a sentry as well as this Robo. A little bit of micro happens at the front. Elfie would, I think, generally be described as the loser in this exchange. He had exactly 1 stalker, but man, he was being like bold as hell, really aggressively trying to even the score up a little bit. Now, Elfie did not end up building a sentry. You generally will need to get that sentry, but in this circumstance, he saw exactly where his opponent was at in a defensive position. And Elfie is going to do something that seems very bold. He is going to straight up get an observer. And there he's adding on the 2 gateways, not really rushing for them. I mean, he had the money to be able to do so. But he just sort of eventually got them. No matter how clever you think you are in terms of pushing your opponent back and reading him, you gotta get that sentry up eventually. Again, there's the White Raw style of defending this push, which is to get 1 stalker out right away and then get 1 sentry out right away. The 1 stalker pushes back and then it retreats with the sentry there to recover. Elfie does a huge push with 1 zealot and 2 stalkers, spending all that chrono boost on this first gateway. And then he's going to have a single sentry here, immediately allowing him to get this robotics facility coming up. And what if our opponent pushes? Well, we have our sentry ready to force field to defend us, allowing us just enough time to get a friendly immortal up. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment. If we actually come to the Elfie cam, Elfie has absolutely no idea what's going on in White Raw's base. He has the sense that White Raw maybe got some sort of 2-gate stalker. He knows at the very least White Raw isn't going for some sort of crazy 4-gate all-in. Now what? This is the end of the first segment of every game you're going to play. The first segment of every game you're going to play is how the hell do I get 3 gateways and a Robo up? That's really important. How do I get that up? Cool, Elfie now has it up. What do we do now? Elfie is actually going to immediately throw down a support bay, allowing him to get the Colossus up. For a long time, the 1-base Colossus push was one of the strongest pushes that you could do in PvP. However, over time, it's become way, way weak. I mean, the fact is, White Raw is actually expanding. He's getting all these gateways up. He's getting the robotics facility. If you ordinarily do a regular old fast Colossus play, he's going to overrun you with a lot more gateway units and a lot more chrono boosted immortals. But Elfie's going to do something I find quite brilliant. First, he's going to poke in here, and he's going to see, aha, an early expand. Excellent. Note that we're seeing Elfie get a warp prism up. Let me back up here for just one moment. I'm going to stop right before he ends up getting that warp prism started right here. So pretend for a moment we don't know about that warp prism. If you're going for the Colossus on 1 base, there are 2 general options: expanding or attacking. In the expand circumstance, the logic is pretty simple. If I can start producing Colossi earlier than my opponent, then whenever we end up engaging, I'll have more Colossi. So I'm just going to start building Colossi, I'm going to get an expansion and defend it, and then hopefully I'll have like 6 Colossi with range and I can just win with those. That's the way the expanding logic works. We're going to see another one of those today. The attacking logic was like, it didn't really seem to work. It seemed really, really unstable to do that sort of 1-basing play. However, Elfie is going to throw in this warp prism, which I think is absolutely ingenious. The typical theme that we've been seeing from a lot of players is that the robotics facility, it goes absolutely nuts in terms of production. It's churning out immortals or Colossi or something along those lines. Immediately, Elfie's just going to lift right on up with 4 zealots, and he's going to begin chrono boosting out. Ordinarily, the push with your no-range Colossus, again, no range. Ordinarily, this comes with 2 Colossi, but in this circumstance, just 1. Now look at how ridiculously aggressive Elfie is going to be. He's leading with the probe and his observer. He's kind of gearing up for a retreat, and he has this warp prism positioned at the backside. He's not just rushing right in. He's going to be pushing his opponent back. a 4th gateway is being planted. No more Colossi popping out at all. None. Just warping in those basic gateway units. This is the stroke of genius. 1 Immortal to do the damage to the Stalkers, 1 Colossus to do the damage basically to everything. So here's the first play you can do. If my opponent early expands and is extended all over the place, hell, I'm just going to go Warp Prism Colossus. This combo push ends up being wickedly strong. A single sentry has enough force fields to just do a little bit of damage. And here comes the Warp Prism drop. Suddenly White Ra, who this force will crush this force, like 100% of the time. White Ra's even going to have another warp in ready, as we can see that it's very nearly there. However, Elfie just kind of slowly pulls his opponent left and right, with the standard sort of Warp Prism-esque tactics. Just kills off these Zealots like it's nothing. He can easily retreat back into the Warp Prism. Yep, no problem. And begin pushing. Elfie brilliantly has still not done anything with this robotics facility. This is a very, very easy sort of push that we're actually seeing Elfie do. There's nothing too sophisticated about this. Or I should say there's nothing sophisticated about the execution of it. But the whole ideology behind it, using these Warp Prism drops in combination, dropping the Warp Prism at the back. Yeah, the Warp Prism actually ends up dying, but Elfie, continuing to make basically only Zealots out of his gateway, is just being a ridiculous baller in terms of this push threat. Hardly even loses anything. In fact, in the Units Lost tab, look at that resource distribution. That's actually kind of sick. Even if we come over here, I mean, only 5 workers killed, but so much of White Ra's army was sort of pushed and pulled apart. And that ends up being a really nice way to just... So one of my roommates is making a dog noise. I guess I should shut the door during the break. This ends up being a really simple way to push. I think the big keys are the 1 Colossus, not overdoing it with the Colossus, and of course the Warp Prism at the back. You can fiddle around with going 1 base, or after you get your 3-gate Robo, you can experiment around with building a Warp Prism, doing the harassment right away with it. But you're going to have the most success against this style of play, where an early expand plops down. Most of the time, you will see this as a 2-gate Stalker, then expand, or you'll see it as a straight-up 3-gate Robo, and then expand. This kind of push with the Warp Prism at the back, and with the Colossus at the front, very typical, or very solid way to deal with this typical early expand. Now, we're going to do, yeah... Why not? What we're going to do is we're going to take a brief break, and we come back, we're going to do 3 games in part 2 in rapid-fire succession. We're going to see a big variety of different types of build orders that you can do based on the 3-gate Robo. In this first game, it was a very simple 1 base, crushing all-in blow. Very clear, straightforward. In the next game, we're going to see an expand. And then we're going to see some more variations. Ha ha ha. Plenty more PvP 4-gate to come. See you soon for part number 2.